To go wrong in one's own way is better than to go right in someone else's. Now, this is a really interesting quote because, you're really dealing with two different concepts at the same time, right? You're dealing with time, which would be every generation essentially builds on the previous generation to know what they should be doing as they move forward, right? It would be very unintelligible to assume that you can do everything your own way and that you should not take the advice from other people, do the things that have already worked, right? Success leaves clues. And oftentimes the most successful will leave a blueprint. Why not follow that blueprint to make yourself successful as well? I'm not sure it'd be very wise to just assume that everything has to be done on your own, because that would be very time inefficient, let's just say, right? A lot of mistakes that you could potentially avoid by following someone else's advice and doing things their way. So that's already a given. Then you also have the other side of it, which is going to be character building. At what point are you doing what someone else wants you to do because you can't think for yourself? Because you're afraid of failure. You're trying to avoid the hard stuff. You're trying to avoid the suffering that comes from making your own mistakes. There's no character to be built by following someone else's way of doing something. I think we all have to decide exactly what we want at a certain time. I think success can absolutely be obtained by following someone else's way, but I think character is something you have to do on your own. And if there's anything this world is missing the most of, it's character. We don't need any more rich people who are trading crypto, but we do need a lot of people with better character who can treat people well and do the right thing when the time comes. And I think that men nowadays are especially susceptible to wanting to follow someone else's footsteps without doing the hard work to be a better man. Right? I think for the most part, when we argue that guys aren't manning up, they've lost touch with their own masculinity, it's because we don't see the character. We don't see someone who understands grit, who understands what it means to be kind, who understands what it means to help other people out because they know what it's like to be in their shoes, right? Character is also synonymous with empathy for men. And I think that when I look at this phrase, to me, I see character is doing things your own way. And I think Bruce Lee had a quote about that years ago where he said, it's better, you want to try to succeed the best you can, but if you fail gloriously. Like, make it a complete failure so you learn something from it, but at least you're being yourself, you're being authentic, and you're giving it your all. And I think that's the greatest learning tool that any man can have in his arsenal.